Three, two, one, action.
Well, let me tell you something, brother.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Wrestling in Film podcast. Indeed, it is the second episode of the Wrestling in Film podcast, and I really hope you enjoyed the first episode, which we interviewed Corey Kozak, who directed the Undertaker A&E biography, and we really delved into that project. And I really hope you enjoyed the interview. I thoroughly enjoyed conducting it. But today we're mixing it up a little bit. Today we're shifting gears, and instead of an interview, I'm going to explore one of the more historic and classic wrestling in film moments. Yeah, also I would say forgotten wrestling in film moments by diving into The Princess Bride, and more specifically, Andre the Giant as Fezzik in The Princess Bride on what is the 35th anniversary, the 35-year anniversary of the cult classic that is The Princess Bride. So that is what I'm doing today. I will be flying solo for the most part by diving into this and just kind of unpicking the history of the film, and particularly what makes it so special with Andre the Giant's performance, and the impact he had on the film. His performance, of course, has on the film, and just how it's aged so well, how it's stood the test of time, and I think for why it's so special for not only film fans but particularly even wrestling fans, and like kind of the depth to what we see on screen. So that's kind of what I'm going to do today. But also for your listening pleasure, you'll hear a very small clip from an interview that I did with Pat Laprade, who did the auto biography, sorry, who did the biography of on Andre the Giant. He was one of the co-authors, and it was titled "The Eighth Wonder of the World: The True Story of Andre the Giant." I believe that is the title. So I will show. I will. Apologies. I will play a small clip from that interview where we discussed the Princess Bride. I think it's great to get another insight, a deeper insight from someone who knows Andre's life so well, and I think it adds in a whole new layer and perspective just beyond my own. So I really hope you enjoy that. So just to go back, we forget about the Princess Bride. I think when we're talking about film and those who are wrestlers that have starred in films, wrestling, documentaries, whatever it may be, that crossover between film and professional wrestling, the Princess Bride is one of the highest points in that relationship, in that history. Undoubtedly, I don't think there is an argument to that. It's one of the top moments, one of the more historic, iconic moments. But we forget, because today, in 2022, we live in the day and age. Fortunately, as here purely as a wrestling fan, I say really fortunately, we live in the day and age where The Rock is the biggest movie star in the world. John Cena is thriving and doing incredible work. Peacemaker, The Suicide Squad. Dave Bautista is creating this incredible filmography for himself, which is so diverse. He's showcasing himself as a true, incredible actor with great depth. Of course, on the flip side, with films about professional wrestling, documentary series about professional wrestling. I mean, we're days, weeks away from the new documentary series that's coming out on Vice, which has the Dark Side of the Ring creators joining forces with the Rock Seven Bucks production, which I believe it's Tales from the Territory. It's called so much Young Rock. For another example, there's so much wrestling content, and the respect level for professional wrestling has most certainly risen from what it once was. So for that reason, when we're talking about the high points of wrestling and film, that connection, The Princess Bride can go off the radar, because during that time, and we're talking 80s, 90s, etc., that time, the respect level for professional wrestling most certainly wasn't what it is today. I think, though there was high points with, of course, Hulk Hogan and Mr. T, and there was the few Hulk Hogan in Rocky. There was those few little moments, but for the most part, I think Hollywood's perception of wrestling was particularly, with wrestling coming out as being sports entertainment and it was fake and, all that kind of stuff. Wrestling was very much deemed the red-headed stepchild. It was the disgraceful and peasant form of entertainment, for a lack of a better word, and whatever the perception may have been. But it was very, very low, and Hollywood very much looked down upon it and looked down upon the professional wrestlers themselves as nothing more than big brainless people just hitting each other with chairs and whatnot. So that was the viewpoint. But within that era, within that time period, we had what is still 100% undoubtedly one of the most iconic, celebrated Hollywood films starring a professional wrestler, and that was Rob Reiner's classic fairy tale, The Princess Bride, which is, of course, based on the classic novel by William Goldman of the same name. And obviously, today is the 35th anniversary of the film, which has just become a cult classic because the film itself was not a well received box office sensation. It was not by any means. I think it grossed, I believe, 36 million on a budget of 16 million. I could have those numbers wrong, but that was kind of the ballpark. It was not a big success. It did not uh shake the world of cinema in that regard, but it has withstood the test of time. But it has such a fascinating history in terms of it took so many years to make because people were confused by it. They didn't know what exactly it was because the Princess Bride, what makes the Princess Bride so charming, so different, and so unique is, yes, it's a fairy tale. It has giants, the knight in shining armor. It has a princess. It has, magic. It has comebacks. It has heroics. It has, of course, the eternal love. All those themes that very much make it a forever tale. But it's very different. It has, it's very comical. It has apologies. It's very comical. It has is very tongue in cheek. It's very self aware, and I think and it has a ridiculousness to it, and it indulges in that, and it acknowledges that yeah, it still has a seriousness. It has depth and emotion. So it's such a unique blend that I think people didn't know, and Rob Reiner and many of the people involved have said the studios didn't know what to do with it in terms of marketing. So I think it wasn't catered to an audience very well. Hence why the box office success didn't translate to the kind of the impact and success the film has today. But regardless of that, it has become a sensation. It has become a cult classic, as I said. And just to give context on the film, obviously, in terms of what the film is about, what is the Princess Bride for those who have no idea. So the Princess Bride, in very brief form, is a story about is a fairy tale story where, and interestingly, it's not just about the fairy tale itself, but it starts with a young boy being read to. He is ill, and his grandfather comes and reads him the book that is actually titled The Princess Bride. So it's a story within a story, which is really, I thought, interesting idea. So through the narration of the grandfather, we kind of get kickstarted and taken into this fairy tale, and the boys' initial reservations to the story is almost, I think, a lot of us, because when we hear, if we're talking about hard-nosed, aggressive wrestling fans, hearing the Princess Bride, you're like, all right, like, what am I going to get here? I'm not gonna, and maybe it's stereotypical machismo on my part, but that was my reaction to the Princess Bride of like, oh, really? That's what everyone's raving about. But it has Andre, so I'll give it a chance. So that's, I mean, that was me. So I was, in a way, all of us, I think, were the boy in the film. Yeah, like the boy, we get sucked into the tale of Princess Buttercup, who falls in love with a poor farm boy named Wesley. And of course, in the film, we find out that Wesley goes away because he needs to get riches, get a job to be able to support himself and Princess Buttercup in their life ahead. But unfortunately, something goes wrong. Wesley gets attacked by the dreaded pirates, and Princess Buttercup was then going to go on to marry Prince Humperdinck. But of course, Wesley does return, and on upon his journey back, and they're reigniting their love story. We have giants, we have magic, we have sword fights, we have everything under the sun, and that is indeed the very poor retelling on my part of the Princess Bride, but that is a very very basic form of kind of what you expect and the kind of the basic story and of the film. And it has such a wonderful cast in the film. We had Carrie Ellis playing Wesley, the Man in Black. Robin Wright is Princess Buttercup. Billy Crystal is Miracle Max. In a wonderful, wonderful cameo. Mandy Patinkin is Inigo Montoya. Wallace Shawn is Vicini. Chris Sarandon is Prince Humperdinck. And of course, wrestling fans, Andre the Giant plays the giant Fezzik. So that is the Princess Bride in a nutshell. And what's fantastic is the accolades that the film has received since then. It's it's grown. I've watched documentaries, I've watched interviews, I've watched special features on the DVD about the level that the film kind of the level of impact the film had on audiences. I never knew this. I knew it was a very well received film, and over time, it's just gained strength in terms of the appreciation the film has received. But I didn't know to what extent. And it is really is a cult classic. Like I said, in lockdown, for goodness sake, we had a home video recreation of the film where Rob Reiner, Hugh Jackman, Dave Bautista, various other major stars recreated mini scenes of the film, and it kind of got put together to make this home video version of The Princess Bride, which is just it kind of speaks to the depth and love that the film has when these major stars in lockdown choose of all the hundreds and thousands of films, they choose The Princess Bride to recreate and try to give some entertainment to people. People have tattoos, and people talk about how the film has saved their lives. Somehow Rob Reiner and Carrie Ellis have kind of told these stories. So truly, it's it has such a effect and such a impact on the film. The accolades it's received across various publications. In the 2000 Readers Magazine edition of Total Film, it was voted the 38th greatest comedy of all time. William Goldman's screenplay was selected by the Writers Guild of America as the 84th best screenplay of all time in 2006, and they earned the very same ranking of 84th greatest screenplay of all time in 2013 as well. So, I mean, these are just some of the accolades that the film has received. So it speaks to the level, it speaks to the staying power of the film. Because what's also interesting is the film itself it's not a huge budget. It doesn't look spectacular in every scene. There is elements where as older films do, especially ones that have more effects and are magical and supposed to be in a very very fictionalized world, they can age. But there's a charm to The Princess Bride that doesn't doesn't go away. And I think that it's a mix, it's blend of being self-aware of being a little silly and a little over the top makes certain things like the rodents of unusual sizes, which is just a small person in a costume, in a rat's costume. The sets where it's so very blatantly obvious, not a giant mountain where Andre the Giant is climbing up a rope with three people on his back. So, these things, instead of being so obviously painful to watch, become charming. And, it's just all wink, wink, and we go along with it. But we all get invested in the story and immersed in what we're watching. So that's the beautiful thing. And, it grows on you. It grows on you. And if I was to take it back to my own first reaction of the film, as I said, historically, knowingly or unknowingly, my passion and kind of things that I really loved was seeing this merging of professional wrestling and film. So when I found out that, especially back in the day when there was no very few bright spots of this relationship, very few, outside of The Rock, there was very few positive films starring professional wrestlers. So when I heard about this one film that Andre the Giant was in and had a pretty significant part in, was really, really good and, very worth watching. I was like, oh, absolutely, let's go for it. What is this? And I was told The Princess Bride. And when I heard the title again, like I said, the macho element of, this wrestling fan was a bit taken aback. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. But I'm open minded. So I watched it, and I don't know what I was anticipating exactly, but the first time I watched it, I didn't dislike it, but it didn't land with me. However, I think as the film's story itself in terms of its legacy, it grew on me. The film grew on me, and in particular, Andre the Giant's performance grew on me, and it really, I found such charm and such realness and really genuine elements to Andre's performance that I think a lot of people don't look into. And I think perhaps that's me really digging deep into Andre's life and history. And there is a beauty to Andre's performance that I think sometimes it can go unnoticed. Andre's performance, there is a lot of meaning, to adds a lot of meaning to the film, because not only is Andre's role significant in the film, like he has, the giant Fezzik is a big part of the tale, but Rob Reiner said that without Andre the Giant, without casting Andre the Giant, he was one of the three people, along with Carrie Ellis and Robin Wright. If those three people were not casted for The Princess Bride, Rob Reiner would not have made The Princess Bride. This film would not have been made. This eternal cult classic would not have been made. And William Goldman essentially had written the part for Andre the Giant. So that speaks to the significance of Andre the Giant's role in this film. Yes, he's not the lead, the poster child of this film, but he has a significant role in the film. And if you want to question how important he was to the film, that's how important he was. That without Andre the Giant, we never get the Princess Bride. So that alone speaks to his significance. But what's really, really special about Andre's performance, and it is not only is he effective, he pulls off the really kind-hearted giant really, really well, but he does so because the film is art imitating life. Is the film is art imitating life? Apologies. For a wrestling fan, you get to see the real Andre. Like there's lines that are comedic, but so true to life, because there is when him and Kerry Elwes are having their big fight scene, Fezzik and Wesley have their little fight scene. He throws the rock and they're kind of having a little exchange, and Andre the Giant just says, it's not my fault being the biggest and the strongest. I don't even exercise. you know, and that's very much true to uh Andre's real life. I mean, he didn't exercise, but of course his having giantism and these things made Andre this enormous man and much stronger than most, if not all, people in the world. And of course, Andre had such a big heart. He was a really, really kind-hearted individual. And I acknowledged my interview that that I'll play a little bit of with Pat Laprade, and Pat Laprade spoke about when he dived into Andre's story. The thing that struck him perhaps more than anything was Andre's big heart, and he had such a kind heart. And that's spoken about in so many stories on the Princess Bride set as well. How he would put his hand over Robin Wright's head to keep her warm, in the freezing cold of the UK. He was when he was older, he would have a kind heart for prostitutes and help them out because prostitutes helped him when he was so young and homeless. So there is this beauty to Andre's to Andre's performance in this that I just think is just it's just not realized, and I think people don't pick up on it perhaps as much as they should. He's witty, he's innocent, he shows weakness, and that all existed in Andre's real life as well. The scene where Mandy with Mandy Patinkin and Wallace, where he's on the boat and Vicini's berating Fezzik, and Fezzik's almost kind of upset. That could be Andre in real life. Andre had those insecurities, had those weaknesses, had those moments of feeling upset and wishing he wasn't this big giant, and maybe he could just for one moment, one day, live in you know a normal body, and not be the poster child and seen, and sometimes unfortunately berated by or bullied by people's words. So there's this innocence that existed in Andre. There's a sincerity, there's a beauty, and the charm, and the comedic nature of Andre that so many people talk about, but wrestling fans, if you just watch his wrestling career, have never ever seen. So I think we get more of the real person, uh, real Andre the Giant, sorry, than we ever have in wrestling through the Princess Bride. And that, as a fan of just Andre, of just wrestling, was so beautiful. And I think that's one of the great and most beautiful things about film as well, is when art can indeed imitate life, and it does here in the Princess Bride. And I think one thing that really sums up uh, Andre's performance and why it comes out so well is a behind the scenes story that it is in the making of the Princess Bride. And Mandy Patinkin, who plays Inigo, who is obviously one of Andre Fezzik's big partners in the film. Mandy talks about a story where Andre the Giant says, he said they were on the boat on the set, and they were with one of the writers or assistant writers, and the writer asked Andre, has this experience been pleasurable for you? Have you enjoyed this experience? And and then what? And then I believe the question was what in particular has made this such an enjoyable experience for Andre? And Mandy said, without skipping a beat, Andre says, nobody looks at me. And that was Andre's life. He was so used to being feared, so used to being looked at. Even his past roles that he had done, the $6 Million Man, just other roles that he'd done. He was also, like in the Princess Bride, he's playing a giant and like kind of like a monster in a way. But in those films, he was there to be looked at. He was just a monster and an evil thing. Where in the Princess Bride, yes, he's a giant and he's a spectacle in that sense. But eventually, over the course of the film, he's just another wonderful element of this beautiful story. And you don't look at him and you don't take a second glance or just stare at him and, oh my God, this giant. No, he's a giant, yes, but he's this loving, great element of this story, and he just becomes another part of this wonderful story. And that's, again, he just in on the set, he became just one of the guys, and nobody just stared at him like, "Oh my god, lose that! What's this?" He was just another one of the boys, like he was in professional wrestling, and at that comfort level, I think you can see translates to his performance as well, and that's why he's so calm, and his lines come out effortlessly, and it's there's just an innocence and there's a beauty, and you can see the joy that Andre has performing, and when performers have such joy and happiness, and it translates on screen, it's a beautiful thing for a viewer to watch. And I still absolutely adore watching it to this day. 35 years after the film has come out, and people who watched it then watch it now and still love it. And I think I just wanted to highlight particularly that element, the wrestling side, the wrestling in film side, that exists within the Princess Bride, and how much Andre's performance does for the film, and how much the beauty of it really, and the all those behind the scenes elements that come out onto the screen and make just such another really really beautiful element to the Princess Bride. So I thought that was important to dissect, and I really wanted to talk about that, because I think, and I hopefully, if anything, maybe if after listening to this, you'll enjoy watching Andre's performance even more when you go back and watch it again, which I hope you do, because I watched it again recently, before this podcast, and yeah, it was just a thrill, such a thrill. So what I'll do now, though, after you just heard my rambling for the past, I don't know, however many minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, I'm not sure. Well, whatever it was, I hope that gave some insight, and you got my perspective, a perspective on Andre's performance. But what I will do now is transfer over and post play, apologies, play the clip from my interview with Pat Laprade, where we discuss Andre the Giant and the Princess Bride.
One thing you also really talked about, which I love, is because I'm a big, like, I'm fascinated with the kind of merging of like wrestling and film, whether it's kind of films about wrestling, or kind of wrestlers going into films, a bit like being actors, of course. And obviously Andre's kind of really highlight in that area is the Princess Bride. What did you kind of learn about Andre and the Princess Bride, like that whole process and that role, that maybe you didn't know, or that that really surprised you?
Probably the thing I was surprised the most was learning that he felt on that he felt there that the same feeling he had when he was in a wrestling locker room. Okay, so let me explain myself here. Andre was never really good, didn't really feel good anywhere else besides home, anywhere else than in a wrestling locker room. It was like a sanctuary for him, it was the only place where he wasn't getting judged, where he wasn't being looked at in a weird way. He was just one of the boys, and he appreciated that a lot. Now, while they were filming Princess Bride on the set there, he kind of felt the same,
Yeah.
He felt that he could just be himself, that no one was there to judge him, and I remember one of the producers really made sure that would happen. He didn't want the other actors to start acting weirdly around Andre, like a normal person would have done, meeting him at the airport, or elsewhere, on the street, so by the end of the filming, he felt like at home there. He felt like it was a wrestling locker room to him, where he wasn't treated differently. He could be himself, and he enjoyed himself a lot. So that I was surprised to read about this, and it kind of made me sad, because when I was trying to rationalize everything and analyze everything, I came to the realization that I believe that if Andre would have made Princess Bride 10 years before, that he probably would have left pro wrestling, or would have done the deal that we're seeing in John Cena, or before that The Rock, where wrestling would have started to take less and less place in his career, and his movie career would have picked up from there. But by the time he did Princess Bride, his health started to fail him, and he wasn't even able to. And that's another thing that you learn, is that he wasn't even able to. The fight scenes were difficult for Andre, where you would have thought that a wrestler in a fight scene would be very easy to do.
And he couldn't even catch Robin Wright.
Exactly, he couldn't even grab or caught Robin Wright. So she had to add cables, to help with that. So he wasn't. His arms, were getting weaker and weaker. So if that would have happened 10 years before, where his health wasn't that much damaged, it could have been a whole different scenario for Andre, and perhaps he would have become more known for his Hollywood days than his wrestling days. But it would have been less bumps on his body. It would have been, completely different. Money wasn't an issue, but he would have probably became richer and richer. But I mean, the money wasn't an issue by the 1980s. But in any case, I just think that, and maybe it would have changed his life. Maybe someone in the movie world would have, would have told him to get the surgery, would have convinced him to do the surgery, because it would have not changed a thing. But no one in the wrestling world did. So who knows? How it would have changed it. That's a big what if for me. What if Andre would have found that Princess Bride set sooner in his life, where he would have realized, oh, okay, I can be treated like a normal person, not only in a wrestling locker room, but also on a movie set. And to me, that's one of the big what ifs of his life.
Yeah, that's actually amazing. Actually, I never thought about it like that. To be fair, I mean, if I'm honest, the stories that the cast tell about Andre is probably some of my favorite things to hear about. I think I've been reading the Kerry Ellis's book about the making of the Princess Bride as well, and he just speaks so fondly about Andre and stuff. It's pretty incredible. And I'm sure you saw there's a behind the scenes kind of video. I think it's on YouTube as well, of Andre and the Princess Bride, and Mandy Patinkin kind of touches on what you talked about. And they said to Andre, "What's your favorite part about working on the Princess Bride?" And he said, "Nobody looks at me."
Yeah, he was just one of the boys, all over again. So, and that's what he was always trying to find in his life, a place where he could actually just be himself, and that was so hard for him to find that. So yeah, I mean, that's one of the main reasons that he enjoyed that set so much.
And you also did probably an unintentional swerve, if you will, but during the book you talk about Andre wasn't too kind of enamored with the kind of movie making process when he made $6 Million Man, because he didn't continue on playing that character and maybe rejected other roles. So it kind of feels to me, I know obviously we're gonna talk about the Princess Bride, but because he didn't like the process, I was how does he end up doing the Princess Bride if he wasn't really particularly fond of doing
the story.
Yeah.
He liked the story. He read the manuscript and he was he read the book and he was oh wow, I want to do that movie. I want to do this, and that's but he always did other roles, but nothing really. He was not. That's the movie he was the most proud of.
Yeah.
To the point where he was always bringing a copy of it, a VHS copy of it, and you would play it in buses, it would play in hotel rooms, and probably some of his coworkers, some of the other wrestlers, probably some of them probably saw that movie more than once, But every time on it was like, hey, come over my room, gonna watch the movie, and I'm gonna order food, and then, obviously you were never paying with Andre, so that was an incentive to actually go there and watch a movie with him, because you're gonna get free food and you're gonna drink and eat, till you can't no more. But he was really really proud of it, and I think that's the story. He liked the story and he wanted to do it, and on top of it, he was treated differently on the set. So everything was there for Andre to like that.
Yeah, and of course, over time, like that film has become, such a big part of cinema, and it's deemed like one of the great films, in the history of film. And obviously, its impact has kind of grown over the years, similar to perhaps even Andre's legacy. It's kind of like just become bigger over time. And I feel like The Princess Bride is like really instrumental to Andre's legacy as well, because it's become such a big film. It's even made Andre still well known to kind of just the general population who may know him more from Princess Bride than anything else. So do you think that is still a huge part of his legacy as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. There's, like you said, there's probably people who know him more for what he did in Hollywood and in this movie in particular than his wrestling days, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, his wrestling, he did that movie because he became known as a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
The same deal that what's his name?
Rock?
The Rock. There's a lot of Hollywood stars like The Rock, like John Cena, who actually they started, and even if you want to extend the list to Piper, Austin, Hogan, they all did
Batista
movies because of what they did, as a pro wrestler.
Yeah.
So and Andre's career as a pro wrestler was a lot bigger than his days in Hollywood. But Princess Bride became such a cult movie with years, and probably a lot after Andre had passed away. Because when it was released back in the 1980s. When was it? It was in 1987.
Yeah, 7, I think.
So it didn't it didn't win any Oscars. It wasn't like it won a few festival things, but it wasn't a big box office phenomenon.
Yeah.
So but with time it became a cult movies, and that's why so many people remember Andre playing in this.
That was my snippet with Pat Laprade, and I hope you enjoyed my ramblings at the beginning of this podcast, as well as that little insight. Apologies, the audio is a little lower, but I hope you can still pick up and enjoy that clip with myself and Pat. And Pat was a wonderful interview, and speaking about Andre in such great detail was wonderful, and to get his insight and perspective was fantastic. And one of the things I never actually thought of as well was, when he spoke about, what happens if Andre the Giant got the Princess Bride sooner, and perhaps that process would have given him not only a new career, but perhaps that career could have led to him getting the surgery, the operation of what he needed to stay alive for longer. And he could have been perhaps The Rock and Cena, in some capacity long before they ever did what they did in Hollywood. And beyond just this one performance, Andre the Giant could have had a much larger impact and success in the acting world, and had an even bigger stamp in the wrestling and film history than he already does. So it was really interesting to actually just think about that. And then just the various other insights that Pat gives and the perspectives that he gives were fascinating. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode. Like I said, apologies for my rambling. I'm still getting better at this, guys, but I hope you enjoy my insight on kind of where I'm coming from. I hope you enjoyed the Pat Laprade clip. And I just hope this gives another flick and another perspective on The Princess Bride and Andre the Giant. So, for those of you who have seen Andre the Giant in The Princess Bride, I hope you go back and watch the film and enjoy it even more. For those of you who haven't, by all means, check it out. It's well worth your time. It's wonderful. It's so charming. You just can't help but fall in love with it. Thank you so much, guys. Like, subscribe, share if you enjoyed this. I really, really appreciate the listens. This was the Wrestling and Film Podcast, Episode 2, The Princess Bride and Andre the Giant.